Hello and welcome, friends and family, back to We've Got Issues. It is our pleasure to come to you once again to talk about the topics of the day that we think you will want to hear more about, things that maybe you are discussing just like we and our friend group is. And today we have our usual cast of characters. We've got Ron Evans.
Hey.
Coming from the DMV, and Darren Gray. That's
what
my
up?
man. Yeah, representing the D as always. And of course, new to the pod, but always bringing the heat, Miss Ella Neely.
Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day. Love it, love it, love it. And of course, my name is Nick Cates. I am your friendly moderator and sponge of wisdom from all these people. And today we're going to get right into it, and we're going to toss it over to Darren, who is going to lead us in conversation and in knowledge and wisdom. Darren, please do take it away.
I will. In conversations with friends, family, coworkers, I've noticed that people still relate to something called a personal fable. So, Nick, if you can roll tape, then I'll get into it a little bit more.
You may have not have heard of the psychological principle of the personal fable, which is based on a phenomenon occurring in the adolescent years in which teens believe that their experiences are uniquely profound and everyone is watching their every move. So I believe that this personal fable, especially in the social media age, doesn't simply vanish when we grow up. So these narratives, they follow us into professional life and really shape how we interpret workplace dynamics. In conference rooms and Slack chats, we still construct stories where we are the main character. But here's the newsflash: we are only the main character playing the leading role in our own lives.
So the thing with personal fable is, in the personal fable, in my experience, people, they see themselves as either the hero or the anti-hero or the selfless or unsung hero, the victim or the clever sidekick in their own story. Rarely do people see themselves as the villain. And when you think about all the people who have personal fables, it's almost like they're in a parallel universe. So this person's personal fable interacts with this other person's personal fable, but in a different way. And so as I've gotten older, I'm not trying to be the hero, the victim, the villain. I'm trying to be an NPC, a non-player character. I just want to keep the trains going, the streets paved, and the windows washed. So I don't know, what is your experience with people and the story that they live in?
You know, I'm going to jump right in on this subject because, Darren, this is something that I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about too. And I think about it I think about it on the micro level in terms of my personal interactions, my personal kind of consciousness about how I interact in the world. But I also see this issue from a global and more particularly national level. I think that the whole story of our country, our whole democracy, our whole country, our whole way of life is all based on a story or stories, right? And I think in many ways, as a country, we have yet to grow up to realize that we are neither, America, for example, is neither a hero nor a villain. We're actually somewhere in between, right? But most people want to look at the country, and I hate to, always go here, but what's applicable to the macro is also applicable to the micro. People want to see our country or our leaders or our national story as one of either heroism or as we've been the villain, both to our native population and to the world. But really, we're somewhere in between. And I'll end my little thing about this by saying that the sooner we're able to reconcile that issue, the sooner we'll be able to stop wasting our enormous talent and ability and our vitality on fighting over a story that is neither one nor the other, but it's both. So that's my immediate reaction to that.
I mean, I'll go next. I think that I'll turn it from the macro to the micro. I think when you look at families and you look at intergenerational legacies, all of us are making a legacy. It's either a good legacy or a bad legacy, but we're making a legacy. And I think the personal stories communicate values and mores that we want to pass down. Hopefully it's a positive passing of values to the next generation. So there's part of, my origin story that I communicate, which is a curated view with an intent in mind. And that's how I communicate values down to our kids. And I think that that's no different than on the macro level, like you said, Nick, where there are values that we want to communicate as a country, as a founding country, that may or may not be true, but it's curated to instill in the population, these are the values that are uniquely American. So I think at the macro and the micro, it all plays the same.
Ella, anything to add on that?
I kind of agree, because the macro is made up of the micro, and all of us are individuals. And this kind of is going to speak to what I'm going to talk. And we're all individuals. And so because of that, we all have our own issues that we bring to the table. I don't know if it's issues, but our own life. And that life is very different from anybody else's life. And we have to come together. I see it as we have to be able to come together to have, I don't know if there's similar values, but just a value system, and where we're trying to love each other, protect each other, and move forward. But all of us are different. And we have to, in order for us to grow, we have to be able to have systems in which our differences are not as separate as the common goal of human life and preservation.
And I agree. What I see with the personal fable is a different perspective on the same set of events. So while you as a manager, you're doing your best to, make sure that your department is going well, and and you went into the meeting and you took one for the team, and you have this whole story that you tell yourself, but the people, your subordinates, they see that same set of events as he's always taking credit. Poor me. I never get credit. I never do this. And so it's the same set of events. And, going back to what Nick said about the micro and the macro, when you look at the left versus the right, the left may say, the people who are here who aren't legal, they just need a chance. Whereas the people on the right are like, well, they're taking stuff from me. Same set of facts, but a different story. And I think in personal, interpersonal, political, and in business, people get so wrapped up in their own story that they always see themselves as the main character. They don't see themselves as, being the bad guy often, or they don't see themselves or their role, and they can't have that cognitive empathy to look from another person's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think Ella hit it. I'm sorry I'm about to give you some praise, Ella. So forgive me if I cut you off here. But I think Ella hit an important point on the head, which is, and I think, Darren, you're alluding to that, is the idea of a shared ethic, or a shared sense of direction, where I think we've been predisposed to believe that our own individual desires, our own individual needs and wants are more important than the collective need. And when you start talking about collective needs, when you start talking about collective responsibility as well as collective benefits, people start to try and label it as communist or socialist or whatever. But truly, we have to decide whether we are the United States, like United is the big word, states is the small word, or we're the United and States. Like in other words, the collective is less important than the individual, right? And so I think that the story that we've digested, because it is profitable for those who hold the main levers of power to keep people arguing amongst themselves, while those who hold the main levers of power, it could be in your company or it could be in your country, like they are the ones who profit by the confusion of people looking at one another with contempt or with suspicion, as opposed to people on the ground, individual people realizing that there is both a collective responsibility we have for each other, and there's also our individual, and neither one can really excel without an attention to the other. So, Elle, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, but we all look at things through a different lens. I mean, I'm a Black female and I'm single. So my perspective is going to be very different from a Black male married person. And I don't think that we take those things in consideration, and we need to. Or my perspective is very different from a white farmer who has 10 kids. But all of these things are important because they're individual to us. They're individual to how we live our life, what we need. But still, we have to, on a macro level, be able to join together with common sense to be able to move forward. But all of those things are particular to us. My nephew is autistic. So the things that are about him are specific to his needs. But so it is about an individual thing. And the manager is very different from the employee, because the manager has to look at the macro, where an employee looks at, okay, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to be here on time. There's different things that we look at, and everybody, instead of being empathetic or just thinking beyond ourselves, we want to say, oh, well, they're not doing this, or they're this, or they're that. And I think that this is where the compassion, this is where the empathy, this is where the communication as the manager to say, hey, how do you feel about this? Because they might be looking at it totally different than the way that you're looking at it as a manager.
I think one of the challenges I have with this criticism of the personal fable is that it assumes that as the hero of your own story, that you don't give credit to people that have helped you along the way. And I think that, when I look at, my personal story, I can think of two guys, the one that brought me from LA to AOL and to the East Coast. And I can think about another guy that I met at AOL that I'm at the company I'm at now because of him. So there's a personal fable about how we went from, where we were to where we are now. But as part of that, there are people that have helped us along the way. And I think that a personal fable must include the ability to say, I didn't do this on my own. Yes, I have agency over my decisions for the most part, but I would not be here if some other people didn't open doors for me. And that's okay to be a hero, but also acknowledge that you're part of the Justice League. You're not just out there on your own, solving crime by yourself.
And that's the different types of hero. There's the hero, the unsung hero, the selfless hero. There are different types of hero. But the thing that I think we often lose perspective is, while we may be the hero giving credit and kudos to other people, we could be a villain in someone else's life, knowingly or unknowingly, not realizing the impact that we have on someone else as we're pursuing, our goals. And we easily dismiss other people as, they're a hater, they're this, they're that, they're like, we easily dismiss them, especially when we're under attack, because we assume that, they're attacking the hero, whereas they may, in their mind, be defending against the villain, but we don't give space for that to occur. We see ourselves as the hero. There are people that we may have intentionally or unintentionally hurt, and you're the villain in their story, and they're responding to you in that way. And I think sometimes we lose perspective on that.
Well, but see, I think to have that dichotomy means that in a lot of cases, you are closed to an opinion other than your own. Because again, this gets back to previous conversations where some people think that it's a win-lose, a zero-sum gain scenario in life. And for me to be right, you must be wrong. So it's okay for me to be wrong as long as we do what's right. And I think that's the challenge, is people have their egos too much at stake when it comes to the hero-villain narrative.
Yeah, but then there's the people that you don't think are relevant as well, right? So they may not be, in their mind. Let's say you walk by a homeless person, for instance, and you just keep walking and keep strolling, and they ask you for something and you ignore them. You're not saying I devalue your opinion. They are just irrelevant to you. and you may be a villain in their perspective. So it's not just, you're attacking them. They're people that you ignore, people that you don't care about, people that you dismiss can also see you as the villain. And I think we forget that other perspectives in our day-to-day lives are there because we're focused on us as the central point, central character in our story.
But we have to. Sometimes I'm the villain, sometimes I'm the hero. And that's just life. That's the way it goes. I mean, it depends on the situation. The homeless person, I bless them, but they are inconsequential to me getting what I need at that particular moment. It is all about agency. It's all about taking care of yourself, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And so I guess I don't have enough time to think about all the people that I affect. And I just hope that I affect them in a positive way. I want to be love and share love, but everything, it's how many, 8 billion people on the planet? I mean, you only can do so much with what you got.
Right. To move it toward the solutions, side of the ledger, my basic, idea about how to deal with it is that we have to learn to kind of get over ourselves, right? The idea of how do you navigate through life, taking life seriously, but not yourself, right? You understand that there are important things that need to get done. There are important things that are happening. But to Darren's point about how to see everything as a personal fable, not a personal truth, but a fable is something that is a story that helps you to understand, hopefully, what life is about. If you can get over yourself enough to know, to Darren's point and to other points that have been made, that your story is only relevant to you, and you recognize that everybody else is walking around with their own stories, right? So what you need to be able to do is not take yourself so seriously, but take seriously that you need to navigate towards certain ends. And sometimes you're going to win, and sometimes you're going to take an L, right? But on balance, your hope is to move forward. And that is on the micro level, but certainly on the macro level, that if we could just get over the idea of being right or wrong, to Ron's point, it's like Shakespeare said, there is no good or bad. It's only believing that makes it so, right? So the idea is that you have to just stop that whole zero-sum game mentality and realize that today you won, by whatever measure you want to call that, tomorrow may not. But you, on balance, are going to, if you're looking at life the right way, you're going to be on the positive side of the ledger.
Since you threw out Shakespeare, if Julius Caesar in Act 1, Scene 1 had listened to that soothsayer, the play would have been over then, because he would have said, you know what? You're probably right. I need to go question the people that are around me in the Senate. And I think that's the perfect example of when hubris and pride take over. You don't listen to people. And I got to reiterate, I think it's important to have an origin story. I think it's important to have a fable, a personal fable, but included in that fable must be that I'm not a genius here. I surround myself with people that I listen to, and then I take their thoughts, and be it at work or in the personal life. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I surround myself with smart people. And there's a humility in saying, it's okay that I got here, either good or bad, on the strength of the people that I have in my life.
Mm-hmm. And when I alluded to being an NPC, the non-player character, that's the one who, Grand Theft Auto, who paved the streets, who put the window up in that store, taking care of the basics of the world around you, the environment, not trying to be the hero, the victim, the villain, really just trying to make the world a little bit better, and getting out of, like Nick said, taking myself so seriously, really focusing on, being that person who is concerned at a macro level.
But Darren, how do you help me reconcile the fact that you want to be a non-player character, and how you then still have agency over your life, your family, your decisions, if you are only a marginal character in this play? or this
Well,
game.
you're set, but the marginal characters are what to make the world go round, right? You don't think about the person who paved your street. You don't think about the person who laid the pipe so that you can have water. We take all of those people for granted in our own personal fable. We don't think about, the person who laid down the internet cable. You don't think about the person who's assembling the iPhone. Those are all people who are just doing the work of keeping things going. So you can be a person who has agency, because those people do have agency. They're doing things, and you can focus in on the things and not on yourself so much.
Is that inspiring to you to be a non-player character?
It's, as I've gotten older, what I have seen is that I've taken for granted a lot of my gifts and put them for my own personal usage, but not really done a lot to lay the foundation for what comes after. And I give you an example,
Well, hang on a second. Are you going to come around to answering my question?
Yeah, it's
okay, inspiring. All right. Because again, remember, Ella and I are not moved by your pretty words. We're gonna stay on point until you answer the question.
It's inspiring because it lends itself to the greater good. It's inspiring because I can start looking at things not from, how does this benefit me, my family, and everything. I can start looking at a world in which once I'm gone, the work that I do can still help other people, but it ain't about me.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna jump in defense of Darren, because I actually don't think that Darren, you, and Ron see it at all differently. I see what Darren's saying as an inspiring way to look at life, because it makes, on a certain level, whether you're the guy who lays the pipes or the internet, or you're the president or whatever, you can play the game the same way. I look at it this way. I say a non-player character is like being what I would call a perfect president. Like if I were president of the United States or president of the world. So I have all these people, like you were saying, Ron, who are my advisors. They are the ones who are ultimately, they're going to execute the plan, but also they're going to advise me. So I'm above the fray. I'm outside of the particular problems, and I'm taking in the information so that I can make the decision that will allow my representatives to go out and do it. And then I sit back and I look at what the results of that are. You can't do that if you're so deep in your own narrative or what your needs are, how it's just going to impact me. But you look at what the greater good, it could be for your family, it could be for your community, it could be for whatever it is. But the less you're mired down in your own box of what's good for you, the better you can see the layers that the ripple effects of what your decisions could be. That's how I see it. I think that's inspiring. Ella, I think you had something to say too.
Yeah. No, I didn't have anything to say to that. I mean, I just think that, when you're out there working, you're really not thinking about, well, from my perspective, my own personal fable. I'm just thinking about getting the work done. And so when you talk about being a president, I don't know that you sit back. I mean, you're mired in all of the stuff that you have to do to kind of move it forward. So, I mean, I don't know. I
think that my challenge, and I think Darren and I are farther apart than you described. The problem I have is you've just created a false dichotomy, where if I think about myself, I must be selfish, versus true leaders are ones that think about the organization and the needs and goals of the company, the team, and say, how can I move this organization to where the company wants us to take it? And do that to make sure that everyone is hitting their goals so they can get rewarded. There are no layoffs, there's no firings, the company doesn't go bankrupt. These are all inspiring missions that it's not selfless, because obviously I want to be compensated for that. But I'm doing the work to try to make other people's lives better, because I have seen firsthand people laid off, losing middle-class jobs. Done it so many times, I don't even want to count how many times I've done it and I've seen it done. And you can't see that without feeling some personal agency around, what could I have done better? What could this company have done better? And that is a hero story, but it also means that you take it from some of the pain that you have so you can make the world or your organization a better place.
Well, it's funny because you have attributed characteristics to the personal fable that I didn't say. I said hero, villain, victim, or the clever sidekick. I said nothing about selfishness. I said nothing about any of that. Those are characteristics that you attribute to those characters. I'm simply saying that everyone has their personal fable, and they're one of those. I didn't say anything about them personally or their care about other people. If you were the hero in your story, it doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you selfish or anything. It's just in your mind, you're the hero. And whatever that means to you. Now, to you, it means something different than it does to me. To me, someone who sees themselves as the hero is they're the one who could be the general leading the charge, the person who tries to get legislation passed. They could be that, or they can be the CEO, selfish CEO, whatever hero means to them. So your perception of those words, it's interesting because those are things that you have added to them, not anything that I said.
And
but what's the point though? I don't get it. I mean, we're all one of those at some particular time. So you say that to say what?
Just an observation. It was something that I observed, that when I'm talking to people at work or friends or family, when they're telling their story, they're telling the story from one of those lenses. So like, everything all bad always happens to me. I just listen to them, and then I listen to see which character are they in the story. And it was just an observation, not a judgment, just an observation.
Well, can't they be all three?
Yeah.
Well, you can be all three in different points in different areas of your life. You could be a hero at work and a victim at home.
No, you can be a hero. You can be a hero and a victim at work.
Yeah, you could be both. You could be both. But what I'm saying is, when I hear the personal fable, when people are telling me their story, like Nick said, people live in stories. I listen for what role that they're playing, because that gives me insight into what they're talking about. So when someone says that, like if they're the victim, they will talk about like the person I think you alluded to in one of the other podcasts, who they didn't get the promotion or something along that line, and they were telling you all they were the victim in their story. They couldn't see themselves as anything else other than the victim. And listening to them from that perspective gives you insight in how you can deal with them, because you're like, he's coming from a victim perspective. Right. I'm not going to give him advice as a hero character. I need to give him advice from where his perspective is. It's just an observation. Well, no judgment.
Well, how do you give advice to someone that views themselves as a victim? Do you corroborate and say, yeah, you were a victim?
No, it just gives you perspective into where they're coming from, and you can ask questions to help elicit new thoughts from them. If you understand when you're talking to somebody which character they are, you get better insight into them, into your relationship with them. When you're telling your story to other people, or telling your story to yourself, when you're in the shower or right before if you say, all right, who am I in this character? Like in a lot of my stories, I'm the clever one. I'm the clever one with the good ideas. I'm that guy. And so I'm like, all right, what biases or what perspectives are clouding my judgment in dealing with people when I come from this perspective in this story? So what I'm saying is, it's interesting, like you went where you went in terms of hero, villain, and victim, because that gives insight into who you are. Right. Not good or bad, not judging.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Judging because I am. No, I'm just kidding. No, what I'll say, because I really want to, kind of end this, on solution-based level. And I'm going to offer this into the mix. I think there's only heroes. There's all those other characters are actually traits of what the hero is. Hero, you could change the word hero for subject. I am the subject of the sentence. I'm not the object. I'm not the verb. I'm always the subject, whether I am facing persecution or whether I'm winning or whether I'm the clever one. All those are aspects of the subject or the hero. The hero's on a journey. And at certain points, the hero's winning. At certain stages, he is using cunning. At certain places, he is losing. It's all part of a journey. So whether it's at work, at home, in your interpersonal relationships, on the sports, on the field of sports, you're always going to be the subject or the hero. And at certain times, your personal abilities allow you to win or they are a deficit, or they are whatever. And it doesn't matter at what level of the organization you're at. At the lowest level, you are the subject, and what you do impacts other people, because if you don't do your job, the person above you can't do their job, and so on and so on. So you're always the subject. And the more you can get over it and realize that today I'm here, tomorrow I may be there, and I just need to hold space for other people who are the subject of their own story, and try and reconcile, so that as we are moving together, we're providing space for one another to get what we individually need in light of the bigger story. So that's my last thought on it. Let's go around the board, starting with Ella, get our final wrap-up thoughts, and we'll move on to Darren's parting shot.
So, Darren, I appreciate what you're saying, because I do that myself. You know, you listen to someone's talk and you listen to, are they the villain? Are they the victim? And I find that a lot of times people want to be the victim because they want other people to support them. So I appreciate your fable story, and I agree.
All right, Ron.
Yeah, I think that it's a really good topic. I would probably substitute the word hero or victim with just agency. We have agency over our lives, and whatever the outcomes are, even if we truly didn't have agency, if you move it from a position of, I really do have agency, even though I don't, or I am the hero of the story, even if I'm not, then at least you have the ability to try to make the right decisions for your family or whatever. And I think it's a good topic. I don't know how you separate agency from the three archetypes that you described.
All right, Darren, wrap it up for us and take us on to your parting shot for this week.
Well, my final thought is, as an NPC, it's easier to move across the universes of people's personal fable, because you can seamlessly integrate yourself into people's personal fable without having too much of a impact on their story, but you can be supportive. So that's sort of what inspires me, is the ability to be that supporting character in a bunch of people's stories. That's what inspires me. For my parting shot, urban hawks. I've been seeing red tail, Cooper's hawks all over the city of LA. I mean, like everywhere. Outside of the class, I teach a class during the summer at the university. There's a nest of hawks just everywhere I go. I mean, I have a birder app on my phone, and I've just seen hawks everywhere, and I just found it fascinating. And if you could roll the clip, the guy talks about some of the urban hawks.
In a minute, and I'm here in Griffith Park, and this is a hawk. I'm not an ornithologist, so I do not know much about them, but I know that they are important in Los Angeles, and I want to find out. So let's get into it. Hawks are included in a group of birds called raptors. They're carnivorous birds of prey that include hawks, eagles, vultures, and even owls. Hawks are the top predators of the sky in Los Angeles and beyond, and they're extremely important to the environment and ecosystem of Los Angeles. It's important to note that raptors, and hawks in particular, have been called ecological barometers. It means they help gauge how healthy a habitat is. They're extremely sensitive to environmental changes, so if hawks start dying off, look out, humans. On a day-to-day basis, hawks are important because they eat insects, they eat rodents, and they eat dead carcasses, which may be diseased, which means they help keep these diseases at bay and prevent them from spreading. That's good news for us in LA, because
I'm just fascinated by them. When you're driving down the street, you see them soaring. The cool thing is crows will attack hawks, and crows do the Top Gun thing. They usually fly up in pairs with a wingman, and the hawks can fly straight up, where the hawks have to. I mean, the hawks can fly, but the crows have to do this. And so you see the crows going up and up and up and up and up, and then they'll fly right behind the hawk, picking at them. You see the little jaybirds as well. It's a fascinating thing. I love watching the hawks, not the Atlanta Hawks, but you know.
All right. Well, you know,
Thank you.
Everyone's got their thing. I found what was interesting about his mention was that they are an ecological barometer, and so probably there are many, you know, that talk about that. give telltale signs about how we're doing ecologically. But I play golf, a bit, and I notice on the golf course, depending on where I'm playing, I see hawks, out there pretty frequently and stuff. So I have noticed here and there. So, well, Darren, that was good. Thank you, sir. I'm keep my eyes peeled, and it's always good to have something. I think that's the value of a parting shot. Hopefully we're bringing something that people may not ordinarily think about in their daily life. And so if you're out there looking up into the skies and you see a bird swooping, maybe you're checking out a hawk. So if that or anything else that we've talked about today resonates with you, we'd love to hear your comments about the personal fable, how that impacts your life, what your thoughts about, whether you are the hero, the victim, the clever one, or whether you're a combination of all the three. I think it's an important story or important subject for us to keep in mind as we're navigating through our daily lives. So again, thank you to you guys who have brought it again.